We all want more freedom, and a lot of us work hard now in the hope we'll feel free later. What if there was another way? A way to feel happier, more free, and confident to get better results right now. Welcome to Your Freedom Unlimited, where we share practical stories and strategies to help you show up authentically, drop your fears, and take inspired action on what matters most to you. I'm your host, Jen Ramsey. As a coach with a love for metaphysics, science, spirituality, and strategies that get results, I'll help you step away from self-doubt and create a powerful new story for your life, business, or career. Join me. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of Your Freedom Unlimited with me, Jen Ramsey. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your time with me. So this week is part 2 on our 2-part series on how to change the negative stories you are telling yourself. These episodes follow on from episode 11, where I asked you one of the most important questions I've ever asked myself, which was, what type of stories are you telling yourself about yourself and your life? Why is all of this so important? Because I believe the stories that we tell ourselves actually have a huge bearing on our lives. They determine whether we're happy and joyful or if we're sad and have perhaps more of a difficult life. To recap on this question overall, listen to episode 11 of this podcast. But for today, let's focus on how we change the negative stories we tell ourselves. So, in episode 13, I shared the first 5 steps of my recipe. And these steps were, number 1, becoming aware of our stories. This is the first step, because once we know about them, we can actually do something about them. Number 2 is understanding that some of the stories we're telling ourselves just don't serve us. Anytime we're feeling fearful or not good enough, it's very likely we're telling ourselves a story that just does not work for us. Step number 3, we need to be really kind and compassionate with ourselves. I know way back when I was really coming to realize all of this for myself, I started to beat myself up, but I realized that this was very wasted energy that wasn't going to get me anywhere. So in hindsight, and now I know the importance of being very kind and compassionate with ourselves when we discover these things. So that's step 3. Please be kind and compassionate with yourself. Step 4 is fully realizing you are the creator of everything in your reality. This is a really important step because it takes us out of victimhood and puts us into the driver's seat. If I realized that I create something, then I know that I can change it. And I know that was the big breakthrough I got back then when I went, oh, okay, if I am the one who set myself up in this situation, then I can do something about it. It's not down to everybody else. And the 5th step that I shared in the last episode was understanding that everything is perfect and happens for us. Again, this is a big one, and it's one I'd like you to just sit with and try on for size. But this one is really huge because, again, it's seeing us step away from our victimhood. So those were the first 5 steps in this process. And to learn more about these, I'd really encourage you to go back and listen to episode 13. And today, once you've done that, come back today and listen to the last 5 steps in this process. So what are they? And these steps are ones that I just love. So step number 6. Step number 6 is about understanding the frequency code of your stories. Now, this isn't a new term. You may not have heard this term before. It's actually a term that I have coined. And I think it's really, really vital to understand this and to understand that every story we tell ourselves has what I call a frequency code. And inside this frequency code are many things. But most importantly, inside this frequency code are your emotions, any societal conditioning that you've brought in, any assumptions that you're making, any perspectives that you're holding, and any past experiences you have in relation to this story. Now, I don't want you to get too wound up with all of this. Just understand it's like a whole bunch of experiences and perspectives coming together to create this story. And then, when the right set of circumstances occurs, your emotions may be triggered, which can then trigger your actions, your behaviors, and your experiences. So the idea here is to understand that there is some basic frequency that we're holding around each of the stories that we tell ourselves. And the benefit here is to really start understanding that there's some basic code and that we can do something about it. What I've also found is that typically the stories we tell ourselves are based in either fear or love. So any story that you're telling yourself that maybe may not making you feel so good at the moment is generally based in fear. So your task, should you choose to accept it, is to crack that baseline frequency code on any of those old fear stories and create a new one. So you might be asking, how do I do this? Well, there is a bit to the process, but what I want to share with you that a very key part of cracking this frequency code is to understand the learnings from your old story. It's there for a reason. All of our experiences are there to teach us something. So instead of, thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I've got this terrible story that I tell myself about not being good enough at work or whatever it is, instead of throwing away that old story really quickly and sort of wanting to let go of it, it's really vital just to take a little bit of time to look at that old story and understand what learnings you can get from it so you can do things differently next time. Let me share a little story of mine to help you get a sense of this. So I remember in my 20s, I was working in marketing and communication, and the job that I had was that I was effectively a marketing consultant working with about 10 project officers to help them market and communicate their projects. And on one of these projects, I worked with, he was a much older project officer who was bringing a very large international delegation into Australia for a 4-day visit to our region. So this visit was huge. It was, many people coming. We were doing many different events inside this bigger 4-day event. After a while of working on this project with this gentleman, I realized that he wanted me to really manage the whole project for him, not just the marketing and communication, but also the logistics. And the bottom line was that while I was capable of doing that, it wasn't actually my job to do that. Because if I'd spent all of my time working on the project with him, I would be letting down my commitments to my other colleagues for their projects. So, for the very first time in my life, and in the nicest way possible, I told him I wasn't doing it. And let me tell you, it did not go down well. He really hauled me over the coals. He pulled me into a meeting room. We were sitting in an open plan area, and he hauled me into a meeting room and said, "Jennifer, we need to sit down and talk about this." And he really proceeded to tear strips off me. He was very angry. And looking back now, I can see that he was very purposefully intimidating, and it was a really full-on process. And I was only about 25 or 26, and at the time, and I found it really difficult. What was interesting though was that I found something inside of myself that day, and it was probably due to some other experiences that I'd had previously at work, and we've all had these experiences, difficult experiences at times, but at this day, I really found something inside of myself. And instead of breaking down in tears and sort of caving into his behavior, which was pretty intimidating, and instead of getting upset, I actually held my ground. And I found a very strong, very silent place within me. It was really very much a watershed moment in my life. And instead of me getting upset or getting angry back at him, I just very quietly told him it was not okay for him to talk to me that way, that I was very happy to continue to work on the project with him, but that we couldn't do it in this way, that we couldn't work together in this way, particularly with him speaking to me that way. And I know that as I was saying those words, I was shaking my stomach. When I get into a confronting situation, I get very hot swirling feelings in my stomach and I start shaking. But I managed to find this place in myself where I was able to just say how I felt, what I was feeling in a way that was very clean and very empowering for me, and that wasn't having a go back at him. And looking back now, I realized that while it was a really awful experience at the time, it was the best thing for me. Because what I realized now was that the baseline frequency code of that story was that I needed to learn that I was worthy enough to speak my truth at work and to not be walked over. And to do that in a way that was very clean and very personally powerful, rather than coming from a place of anger and victimhood. What I really needed to do that day was I needed to crack the frequency code I'd been carrying about being a yes person, about being a doormat, and about being a pleaser. And the really important part of this was that if I had come out as a victim, if I'd behaved badly back at him myself, I would not have cracked that frequency code. I really needed in that moment to go into that quiet part and find that place within myself where my energy was clean and where I was really able to respond in a way that was affirming for me, but also, and life-giving for me, but also life-giving for him. I couldn't go back into that space and start tearing strips off him. It would not have cracked the frequency code of that story. I really needed to change the whole dynamic, the whole energy, the whole frequency of that story. So I hope that explains to you what I mean when I'm speaking about frequency codes. It's really about understanding what's going on and then really responding from a very different space. So that's all about step 6. It's about really understanding that your stories do have frequency codes and that your job is to really crack those frequency codes. So once we've done that, once we've understand there is this frequency code, we then need to move on to step 7, which is to consciously create a new story. And this is where it gets incredibly exciting. If you suddenly realize that you've been carrying a story in your life about a particular way or a way that you've been doing things, and you know that hasn't been getting you the results that you're looking for, and this could be a story that you're carrying in your business, it could be a story that you're carrying in your personal life, it could be a story that you're carrying in your career, it could be a story that you're carrying in your relationship. How exciting to think that you could really change that all around, and that you can create a new reality in your old reality. Because this is another point I really want to make very clear to you here. There's no need for you to sort of throw everything out the window. When I'm talking about changing your stories, I'm not talking about having to end a relationship or leave a job or sell your house or do something dramatic. That again is actually an old conditioned story. You can actually, and I have done this successfully, and I've seen my clients do it successfully as well. You can change your reality, your old reality, and you can create a new reality in your old reality. I can absolutely guarantee you that you can do it because I have done it. So this is the exciting point. This is like, wow, here we get to create a new story. So what would you like to do? This is step 7. What is the new story you'd like to create for your life or a part of your life? What do you choose? And what will the new frequency of your story be? And this is where it gets really, really, really exciting. So if we're thinking about what this new story could be, and when I work with my clients on this, we spend some time here, quite a bit of time, learning how to tap into their inner knowing or their source self so that they can really understand what is true for them and what they need and want in their lives. And with this work, I've found my clients really move into a completely different position in their lives. They are stronger, they've got a deeper sense of self-worth, and are more authentic in themselves. All because they have taken the time to tap in and they're aware of the new story and the new frequency that they need to carry to bring that story to life. So it's really powerful work. And if you take anything away from this, just a daily practice of connecting in is just so, so powerful. And it really is vital to the success of our next step, step number 9. So what is step number 9? Step number 9 is about consciously living your new story. So once you have decided on your new story, it's really vital to commit to it and to live it. And this is about devoting yourself daily to your new story. Now, I'm using the word devotion here very specifically instead of the word discipline, because I'm not sure about for you, but when I hear the word discipline, it has got some connotations with it. It has got a bit of history with it, that word. And I know for other people it does too. So I prefer, when I'm working in this space, is I prefer to think about, this is work that I would like to do every day, but it's about how I go about it. I'm devoted to developing my new path and developing more freedom and happiness and confidence in my life. Whereas if I say I'm disciplined about doing it, that word discipline has got a whole lot of other energy that goes with it. So I use the word to devote yourself daily to your new story. So what does all of that mean? Well, it's about setting your intention very clearly and holding it for your new story, regardless of what's going on in your outside world. And there might be some evidence that indicates that perhaps things aren't going the way you want. It's about really clearly holding to that story. And to help you do that, it's about tuning in daily into the frequency that you want to hold for yourself, and to practice this every day rather than giving away to the old fears that might come up. So, as I said, you might see some evidence in your world that says, well, my new story is not working yet. It takes a little bit of time. So what we want to do is we want to stay devoted to that new story regardless of what we're seeing outside. And linked to this is really keeping focused on some key frequencies or emotions that you can focus on daily to help you do that. I call these the master frequencies, and I'm going to be discussing them in future episodes, but this is about really focusing on helping yourself feel good and keeping your vibe high every single day. And I'll be talking more about this in the future, but for right now, it's just really, step 9 is all about just consciously starting to live your new story and to take it with you everywhere that you're going and to live that story authentically. And as part of that, we then move into step 10, which is dealing with any fears that might come up for you and any limiting beliefs that come up, because these things are going to come up. They're going to come up every single day, whether we like it or not. And in fact, I'm starting to have quite a different relationship with my fear and limiting beliefs. I'm almost like, bring it on. I want to see what I need to do, what it is that I need to look at. So, because when I'm addressing a fear or a limiting belief, I'm actually moving forward in my life. If I am staying stuck in my comfort zone, and if I'm not dealing with my fears and my limiting beliefs, I'm likely staying in my comfort zone and I'm not moving very far. And I'm not sure about you, but I'm interested in expanding, having new experiences, and really, really tapping into my full potential. So this is all about, okay, well, how do we do that? We start dealing with our fears daily. So really consciously moving past them and the limiting beliefs that might be coming up for us. So this is daily work, but the results are so worth it. I just need to share that with you. And the key thing here is, even if you're feeling fearful about doing something, it is about going ahead and giving it a try anyway. And a great example of that is this podcast. I have wanted to do this podcast for a very long time, but I had a range of fears that were sort of cloaked in other stories, like, oh, I'm too busy to do that at the moment, or I don't have the right facilities, or whatever. A lot of my fears came down to, what would people think if I was talking about a lot of these concepts? But I am so excited that I have moved through those fears and I have dealt with the beliefs that they still come up, but I'm so excited that I have I've dealt with those things, because the learnings and the growth I've had so far have been incredibly amazing, and we've only just begun. I am looking at the world in a very different way. I'm assessing things for the podcast in a different way. I'm looking at how I'm reflecting and working with things in a very different way. And the feedback I've been receiving already has been incredible. People are telling me that, different episodes are exactly what they needed to hear in that moment. So I'm just so excited that, these episodes are hitting the mark with people and that you are enjoying it. But to do all of this, to live this new story, I needed to come to terms with that old story or frequency code that I was running, and I needed to consciously create a new story and stay with it. So I had to get rid of that old story that, can I do this and what would people think? And I just needed to create a new one, that this podcast is about expanding, having great conversations, and sharing some of the things that I've learned along the way. And I'm sticking with that new story, and well, so far it seems to be working. So what I've found though, in consciously living my new story, I have had to maintain my daily devotion to my meditation, to consciously dealing with my fears, consciously working with my limiting beliefs, moving through them, and then keeping focused on my new story. So it's a conscious daily practice that I'm doing. So that's a wrap on our 10 steps. I know there's been quite a bit here, but it is such an amazing process to go through. And when you turn these negative stories around, it is unbelievable what is available to you. I just want to really share that with you. So I'm going to pass the baton over to you right now. And I'm going to ask you, what story, we can just take one, what story are you telling yourself that you are going to turn around? So what's one story that you could turn around? You could start today. And I'm not talking here about trying to turn all of your stories all around at once. Just find one story that would make a big difference to you if you started to tell it in a different way. Just start with that one and you'll be amazed at what happens. And if you're finding this is something you want to dig into, or you might need some help working through, I'd love to encourage you to contact me for a discovery call to chat about what your needs are and how we could possibly work together. So to book that discovery call, all you need to do is visit jenramsey.com/discovery. So just visit jenramsey.com/discovery and you and I can get on a 20-minute call together. There's no obligations, but we can just have a chat about what your needs are and how we could possibly work together. Now, if you are interested in some coaching and you perhaps like to see if you can get some free coaching, I'd love to encourage you to listen in right now. If you are listening in August or September 2020, you can enter my competition to have the chance to win a 90-minute breakthrough coaching session with me, where we can really focus on you releasing your old story and start to create a new one. So I'm giving away one session per month for August and September. So to get your chance to win, all you need to do is to subscribe and rate and review Your Freedom Unlimited on Apple Podcasts. So to do that, to enter the competition, you just need to visit jenramsey.com/win, and it will give you the directions in terms of how to subscribe and rate and review Your Freedom Unlimited on Apple Podcasts. Now, if you've already subscribed and rated and reviewed the podcast, you are already in the competition. All you need to do is just email me proof that you've done it at hello@jenramsey.com. And I have to say, we are getting some lovely reviews already. So one review we got recently was called Great Topics and Speaker. This podcast series always makes me reflect and think. Each episode speaks to different ways of living and viewing life. I love the guest speakers and Jen is so relatable. So glad this podcast is on my subscribe list. And thank you, eGirl9069. I'm really glad you're on our subscribe list as well. So thank you for your review. So I'd love to encourage you to stay tuned for my episode next week, where I'll be sharing more with you on how to look at these master frequencies that I've been talking about that are so important to living our new story. So thank you once again for joining me today. Please keep tuning in. There's lots of great things coming up in the future, and I would really encourage you to share this podcast with anyone you feel may benefit. Thank you again for spending your time with me, and I'll look forward to talking with you soon. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Your Freedom Unlimited. If you like this show, please share it with a friend. And if you haven't already, subscribe, rate, and review Your Freedom Unlimited on your favourite podcast player. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can reach me directly at jenramsey.com. Thanks for listening.